Okay, it says recording. I see that.
Now I can't even, okay, captions, here I go. Nope.
Oh,
Did it work?
don't see them, but like I had a student do captions yesterday.
I clicked the button.
I don't even see
Okay.
the button on
I
mine. Do
have
you?
caption everything like selected.
Yes. So it is.
But they're just not coming up. Because when I was on it with Dr. B, I could just see they were at the bottom.
It's weird. That should be fine.
Right? It, like everything's allowed.
Let me hop in your room
Okay.
and then I'll see if I can see the captions.
Okay.
You might not be able to see it, but I might be
see
able
them
to
in
see
the other one.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
weird because it should be like show captions or hide captions.
Right?
And it's not there. Maybe more?
No, then it's
Okay.
just recordings.
Okay. Let me figure that out.
Okay.
I'll run down.
Yeah, I don't know.
Please hold while we have technical difficulties. For questions, do you want to take them as they come? Do you want them at the end?
We have a slide at the end for questions.
Okay, so should I just put in the chat, please hold your questions until the end?
Yeah, and we have a few like open-ended questions in our presentation. We were thinking people could just put their answers like in the chat.
Okay.
I think if they it might just like deviate too much.
Okay, so when we have the question slide, should I say if you have questions, you can put them in the chat now, or do you want them to raise hands?
They can do either. Like, I don't mind, like for the question part, I don't mind people unmuting just like during the presentation. It's what I was planning on is just kind of like posing a question and saying like, if you want to put a response in the chat and then
Okay.
reading a couple of those responses.
Okay, so questions for you, we want them at the end. Either
Mhm.
raise hand, put them in the chat, whatever.
Mhm. Will you moderate those, like unmute people and stuff?
Yeah. She has not tried to get in yet, but I'll admit her. I like do not know why this is not working.
I was gonna like try to do a poll, but I couldn't figure it out, and I'm like, this is gonna make me too stressed, so I'm just not going to.
I can do it if you want me to do it.
It's fine. We'll just ask the questions like as we go. We have them like on the slides.
Okay. Oh my goodness. She has not tried to get in yet. Oh, there she is. Okay. Can you see them now?
Mm-mm.
I do not know how to do this. Everything is checked.
I don't know. Like, where do you go? Like, what's the button?
It should be at the bottom. Mine's next to share screen, so it says captions and then caption settings, and it pulls this thing up where you select things. But she said, okay.
Yeah, I don't have that option.
I don't know what to do. Everything's clicked.
Now it says the host has disabled captions.
So I clicked and then like clicked back. Did it work?
Okay. I didn't see a click back. I just saw it disabled.
Okay. Does it say disabled?
Yeah.
Does it say enabled? Okay. Okay, you want me to just do without it, DK? I think we'll just go without it. I will start admitting them now if everyone is ready, and you should have access to share your screen, both of
Yeah,
you.
I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Hold
Okay,
on.
I'll admit them once you share your screen.
Okay, yeah, let me find my presentation. Where is it at? I think it's on this. No, let me know if you can see it. Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, ready? Okay, I'm gonna admit.
Okay.
Okay. All right, we will wait until we get some more. I have some people in the waiting room to go through. We are having caption issues. The hosts cannot see them on our end. Is anyone able to see captions? Yes, no, maybe so. Okay, we are having a lot of technical difficulties with the captions, so unfortunately we'll have to go without it here. I'll kind of try to keep playing around on my end and see if they come up at all. But right now we will have to be captionless. There will also be a recording of this that will be sent out after the summit, and y'all be able to re-access it that way. But I am Isabella Braga, a learning specialist here at CCACSA. I'll be the host of this session. We'll be talking about artificial intelligence and integrity with Jessica Foubert and Alyssa Lamme, both from Texas A&M, and I will let them go ahead and introduce themselves. Also, questions will be taken at the end of the session. You can either raise your hand or drop them in the chat, and then we'll let you know when those will be ready to answer.
All right. Howdy, everyone. My name is Jessica Foubert. I am an Assistant Director of Learning Services at Texas A&M. And howdy, I am Alyssa Lamme, and I am a Learning Specialist here at Texas A&M. All right, and today we want to talk to you about artificial intelligence and integrity. So obviously, a lot of us in learning services have seen an uptick in some different AI systems, such as ChatGPT, Quillbot, those types of things. And we've also seen a rise in some academic integrity concerns as it relates to AI. So we want to kind of talk through what are some best practices for AI usage, how can AI be detected, what are some appropriate and inappropriate uses of AI, and we'll have a little wrap-up activity and questions at the end. So as Jessica said, this is just kind of an overview of our content, also, we're just going to be going through the types of AI in academic settings, where integrity concerns come into play, what are some appropriate and inappropriate usages of AI to inform students about, and also how to monitor AI with students while having sessions with them. So AI is definitely a growing concern over the past couple years when it comes to academic integrity. With just the click of a button, AI can write a paper, create a worksheet, and even answer math problems for you. And so we kind of wanted to give a example of what some of this looks like when a prompt is inputted into a ChatGPT or other type of AI source. So here are some 3 prompts that we have seen students use AI for, such as giving a first-person perspective for a discussion post, creating a meeting agenda, or even answering a math problem. So Jessica's going to present a video for you all to see what that looks like in an AI website. Okay, so I just went ahead and used ChatGPT as an example. ChatGPT will be able to write in first person, but you kind of have to ask it to do that. But it can say things like, I did, I accomplished, I believe in, those types of things. So I'll show you what it looks like here. So as you can see, ChatGPT has given us an output that sounds like it came from a first-person perspective or from somebody that was writing this paper. It's given us some examples of, like, during my time in college, I participated in a student organization. We were able to plan successful events, but it doesn't get much deeper than that. It's pretty vague in some of the examples that it gives. But it does talk about, like, empowering, accountability. It kind of understands what some of the team dynamics are that have to do with leadership. Another thing the AI can do is create a meeting agenda. So we'll show you that. Okay, so some things I wanted to highlight here. It understands what the meaning of NIL, or name, image, and likeness, is. It has some ideas that there has been recent changes in NIL regulations. It knows that student athletes need to be supported in being able to leverage their NIL. They talk a lot about student athlete advisory committees, so they're aware that SAC is a committee and those types of things. So it does have a lot of general knowledge, and it can actually be helpful for us in some of these types of settings. And then we input a basic math problem. In this case, ChatGPT did tell us how to answer the math problem or how to get to the answer, but it also gives us the direct answer.
So this is not an exhaustive list of all the types of AI that are out there, and many applications are being created every single day. But this is just a breakdown of some of the common applications that we've seen in the academic setting, and then broke those down into the three main categories that we see those in. So that first one is writing AI, photo editing AI, and then answering quiz and exam questions. So just going to give a brief rundown through each of these. So ChatGPT is probably one of the most popular AI websites out there, and it's a language model that can answer questions and assist with tasks such as composing emails, essays, and code. And so that was actually the platform that we just used in that video, where you can input a prompt and then it outputs what you asked it to. And then Snapchat AI is very similar because it uses ChatGPT technology, but instead of just being an open source, it is for all Snapchat users, which is a very common social media platform. And so we have seen an uptick in it being used in the academic setting. Grammarly has been around for many years and was a great tool to help with grammar, spelling usage, wordiness, style, punctuation, and giving all of those recommendations to make a student's paper better. And those are still approved and appropriate sources. However, Grammarly has started to provide a personalized AI guidance and provide text generation into any app or website. And that is where some of the potential academic integrity issues could come into play when using Grammarly. And then Quillbot is a paraphrasing and summarizing tool that helps cut writing time down by using state-of-the-art AI to rewrite sentences, paragraphs, articles, and we'll have an example of what Quillbot looks like as well, because it is another very popular site being used in the academic setting when it comes to summarizing research articles or summarizing books that students are to read for a class and give a presentation or a reflection on. And then for photo editing, Facetune is one that we have seen at Texas A&M, and it's a photo editing application that can edit, enhance, and retouch photos on any kind of iOS or Android device. So this could be photos of yourself and of people, but it also can be used to edit documentation, such as doctor's notes or travel letters that could potentially be doctored and sent to professors in a non-acceptable way to try to get extensions on assignments and things of that nature. And then answering quiz and exam questions. Socratic app, I've seen a lot, especially on phones. It helps students with homework by providing educational resources like videos, definitions, question and answers, links, etc. So we have an example of this later on in the presentation, but what I have seen before is it is an app on a phone where students can scan a question or a prompt, and it'll output an answer for them. Sometimes it will provide some guidance of how to answer that question, but where it gets to an inappropriate usage is when it just provides the answer and students just copy straight from that. And then similar to Grammarly, Chegg has also been around for many years and has provided online tutoring services, digital physical textbook, other student services, which were previously academically acceptable, but now they have a Cheggmate, which is a new AI enhanced learning service where students can input a query in any format, whether it be a written text, a photo, math query, or diagram. And so they'll input that and then receive aid in answering that question.
Okay, so to give another example of AI, we're going to show you what Foubert looks like. So this is a really common paraphrasing tool, and I've actually seen this for a couple years now. I had a student that had pulled this website up a couple years ago, and we had to have a discussion about why this is maybe not the best academic tool for him to be using. So basically what Quillbot will do is I copied and pasted a summary from the internet, and it will rephrase the words that you have copied and pasted into the internet, and then you can change any of that phrasing. But as you notice, as I kind of click around, some of that change in phrasing doesn't really catch like the grammar piece of it, and it may not make sense if I change all of the words that are next to each other. There are premium features in which you can rephrase in all sorts of different modes, but standard and fluency are free of charge, so you can just copy and paste anything into here and have those two different modes. And then again, you can change all of the words here on each of those modes. And then something else that Quillbot can do, it can also write you a summary in another language. It doesn't really let you change the wording as much when you change it to another language, but it can do that. And it also has a summarizing tool. So if a professor is asking for a summary of something, it can rephrase it and make it a little shorter. Can also put it into bullet points. And it can also make that summary as long as you want it to. Another thing that Quillbot can do is it can actually paraphrase that summary for you. So you can go summarize the text, and then you can put it into the paraphraser and then reword that same summary. So if y'all want to kind of discuss in the chat, what do we think the harm is in using these tools, and how would you talk to a student about why this is maybe not an acceptable source or use, and why this is not their own words? That's the argument that I've gotten from students many times of, it is my own words because I'm rewording this, but why do we think that's maybe not their own words? Or why is it not acceptable? Proving you understand the material is good. Yep, because the biggest thing that I've seen with AI is that if you're using it to do the work for you instead of enhance your own learning, that's kind of the biggest difference. Lack of critical thinking, doing the thinking for you. Yep. Not actually critically thinking, not the student's own original thoughts, doesn't always cite things. Yep, all great feedback. All right. So now we're going to talk about what are the academic integrity concerns that kind of come with using these tools. What have we seen here at A&M? And y'all can kind of feel free to put in the chat if there are any other cases that y'all have seen with the honor office at your institution. But a few things that we have seen here at A&M, we did have a student that tried to use Facetune to alter an old doctor's note and put a different date on there because they had missed class that day and missed an in-class quiz. So they were trying to get a makeup for it when they didn't actually have a doctor's excuse. We've had students kind of on a broad scale in a class, which we'll give an example of this on the next slide, get caught for using AI for discussion posts. So PackBack is a separate website that sometimes gets used for discussions here at Texas A&M, and it can actually flag if a student is using AI. So what happened here is that the professor got that report and saw that a lot of AI usage was happening, and so we'll talk about kind of how the professor dealt with that situation. And then there's also something called the writing style. So every time you turn something in on Canvas or on Blackboard or whatever system your school is using, it can kind of tell what your writing style is. How do you normally phrase your wording? Do you use a lot of run-on sentences, transitions, those types of things? And if you turn in something that is just completely different from what you've normally written, that can actually flag on those plagiarism checkers like Turnitin.com. So that's one way that AI can be detected. Other ways is that sometimes the citations that AI generates, so say I put into ChatGPT, I need a 500-word response with 2 citations. Those citations may look formatted correctly, but they may not actually be real sources. This nowhere to be found, the link is dead, that type of thing. Some AIs add in there that the prompt is AI generated, but that may not always be caught if the student is trying to copy and paste from the source, and they may just not read it all the way through. And then the writing style of AI, and we'll see if y'all can kind of detect this when we do our examples later on. But AI uses a lot of transition phrases. They have a lot of lists, commas. They use kind of a lot of big wording, but it can be very vague, and it doesn't always answer the prompt thoroughly. So here is the example that we were talking about with the political science class here at A&M. This is the announcement that the professor put on his Canvas page. And he had received a report back from PackBack that there was a lot of flags for AI generated content. So that's kind of the number one concern that the professor had. He had seen some other plagiarism and those types of things, but obviously AI being a growing platform and a growing concern, he really wanted to address his concerns with this. So what the professor offered the students to do in this case was to either self-identify that, yes, I used ChatGPT or another AI in my PackBack posts. And in that case, he provided them the option to have a grade reduction. And then if they did not self-identify and were still caught using some sort of AI, they would receive an F star, which here at Texas A&M, that means you failed the class because of an honor code violation. So these can be very serious in nature, and Alyssa will talk a little bit more about what those sanctions look like and how that affects our student athletes.
Yes, so here at Texas A&M, we have the Aggie Honor System. So it is an office on campus that reviews any academic integrity concerns that come with cheating, plagiarism, and now a lot of their cases have to do with AI. And so Texas A&M's guidance on this is that the misuse of AI is considered a violation of the Aggie Honor Code. So the Aggie Honor Code is an Aggie does not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. And so they consider the misuse of AI as a violation of those values that we try to uphold and those standards that we try to uphold here at Texas A&M. So what can happen is professors can report the use of such technology and recommend specific sanctions. So depending on the severity and the degree to which the student used AI in the course, whether in a quiz, an essay, an exam, and that nature, they can recommend just a grade reduction, an F star, or an honor violation probation. And so these will be decided by the professor and a panel within the Aggie Honor Code. And they will also speak to the student, allow them to plead their case, either plead guilty, not guilty, give their defense, and then they will render a judgment based on that. Currently at Texas A&M, with the uptick in AI usage, our office has actually currently been backed up. And so cases from even prior semesters have still yet to be resolved. And how this can impact student athletes is with their NCAA eligibility. If they do not have a resolved case, or if they are found to be guilty with any academic integrity violations, then that can impact their NCAA eligibility until they either are no longer on probation, or until they can meet the requirements needed to be in good standing with the school. So feel free to drop in the chat if your university has a similar system or code that they follow when it comes to monitoring AI.
Okay. So next we'll kind of talk through what we feel to be the appropriate and inappropriate uses of AI and what some best practices are if your student is using AI for anything. So we've actually seen with the growth of these platforms like ChatGPT, professors actually asking students to use AI in some form. Last summer, we saw an English 104 professor, which is kind of our basic English class, that required students to use ChatGPT and basically stated that you need to generate an article summary, have a main idea, audience tone, all of that from ChatGPT. He had them even kind of use their own work as an example and have ChatGPT rephrase that for them. Most of this classwork was done in front of the professor and with the professor's consent. So obviously we feel that's an appropriate usage of AI. We also have a class here at Texas A&M called ENDS 101, which is a design process class. Students need to be really creative in this class and think of new innovations and ideas. And so we've screenshotted the syllabus here that kind of explains why AI might be a good tool for a class like this. It says they're encouraged to explore chatbots, text to image generators, text to video generators, code, music, those types of things. But the caveat with using AI or with the professor kind of allowing this usage is that citations are really crucial. So we did find some information on how AI should be cited. This was something that I have seen a lot in syllabi and haven't really had a student use AI in order to know how to help them cite that. So we've included this information on the slides, and we'll also provide a resource document with some of this information at the end of the presentation. We have some APA and MLA citations here, but basically what it's going to ask you to do is say what AI it came from, the date that you got it, and then also the prompt that you put in and what came out of that, what was the output. Another appropriate usage of AI is as a study tool. So Quizlet actually has a lot of great practice tests, learn feature, those types of things that can help students study before a test. They can make their own Quizlet and put in the terms and definitions and then study those with a multiple choice test feature like Learn, or with a practice test that will give them various types of questions. We feel that's an appropriate usage of AI versus obviously pulling up Socratic while you're taking the quiz or the test. Idea generation is another great way to use AI. So using ChatGPT as a way to brainstorm. I actually had a student last summer that pulled up ChatGPT because he was filling out a budget worksheet, and he couldn't think of what are all the things that I spend money on or what are all of my expenses. And so he looked up what are some examples of different types of expenses, and it would list it out for him. Formatting. So a lot of students here have to use APA style formatting. So Google Docs actually has some great templates for that where they can input their information in a title page, the reference page is laid out for them, all of the headings are there. And when they just need to format, that can be a great way to do that. And then a spelling and grammar check. So Alyssa mentioned earlier, Grammarly, an appropriate usage of using Grammarly would be to kind of check your spelling and grammar at the end. That's not changing necessarily the content of what you're turning in, but kind of making it more worded properly and those types of things.
So now we're going to speak to some of the inappropriate uses of AI, and the main difference is that this is replacing the student's work instead of helping to supplement or enhance their work. So some of the most obvious inappropriate uses is copying and pasting the output from AI. So for example, in the ChatGPT photo here, it asked, the prompt was a 5-paragraph essay on a certain topic. So if the student was to just ask ChatGPT to write this for them, and then they copied and pasted it over, that would be cheating and definitely an inappropriate use because it was not the student's own thoughts or their own work. And even if a student makes some edits to the writing, it will still flag as AI generated content. Going in and changing some words, changing some of the grammar, erasing some sentences still does not make it the student's own work. And most third-party systems will still be able to flag it. Also using Socratic for answers to quizzes and exams. So that example off to the right here, asking it a question and then it giving you the answer directly. Sometimes it will walk you through of how to solve or find the answer, but it still just provides the answer. And so some students may not use it as a tool to help find the answer, and they'll just copy and paste that answer over or click the correct answer on their quiz or their exam. And also the forging of documentation, like we talked about before, doctor's notes, travel letters, anything that they could try to use as like a university excused absence for an extension and things of that nature would all be an inappropriate use.
Okay, so we did want to highlight what Texas A&M has put out there as best practices for students. So with an uptick in the forms of AI and the usage of AI, the university actually put out some guidelines for research and for usage of AI in the classroom. I won't read these word for word, but kind of go over the high points here. So anytime you're using AI, it should be documented and approved in some form. So a professor having it in the syllabus that they are allowed to use AI would be some sort of written approval. If the student is not sure and there's nothing about that in the syllabus, that's definitely something they can reach out and ask the professor, but should always do that before just using it. Unauthorized use, obviously, as we've talked about, being a violation of the honor system, citing your sources appropriately, citing AI appropriately, and as we kind of talked about earlier, avoid over-relying on AI, because if it's thinking for you and you're not developing those critical thinking skills, you're kind of taking away the point of what we're here to do in education, and that's learn. So if y'all want to pop in the chat, are there any other best practices that you see for students using AI? How can we help monitor that usage with our students and kind of educate them on what the appropriate and inappropriate usages are? I see someone talking about using AI for research articles. That's another great usage that we haven't talked about yet. What else? Anyone else have thoughts on usage of AI, how we can monitor that? That's interesting. I haven't seen that before, having a professor use it as a way to give students feedback for their essays. It's good. Best to explain that AI is more of a resource than to better explain things rather than doing the work for you. Yep, exactly. That's a great point. It's great for explaining difficult things like history, science, those types of things, but not writing it for them. Yep, that definitely makes sense. Awesome. All right.
So we as a collective unit have had many conversations about how we could best monitor and support students with the increase in AI and how we can help educate them, speak to the benefits and risks of using AI, and how we can just best support them in their academic endeavors. So the first thing that we talked about was when you notice a student in a session using AI, how to best first approach that student. And so we said to ask open-ended questions such as, what are you using X website for? What are you using ChatGPT for or Quillbot for? You don't want to automatically assume the worst in students, that they're just using it to cheat. And so asking that open-ended question gives them the room to speak for themselves of what they're trying to do, what they're using it for. I've had many students who were really stuck on picking a topic for a class research project. And so they were just using ChatGPT to help give them some ideas of a topic that they could then go further research for. But there's also been some tells where I've asked a student, what are you using this for? And they close out of it really quick, or they're like, nothing. And so those are some tells that they might maybe not have been using it the most appropriately or with the most academic integrity. And so then you can continue to have follow-up conversation after that. So if they're really struggling, we would like to redirect them to approved sources. So going back and helping them find the course content for some help and some direction to find a topic, find answers to difficult discussion questions, or if it's an open note or take home homework, how they can go back to the course content to help them work out those problems. And so really helping them use those critical thinking skills and relying on the information that the professor has provided to them rather than what they can just find on the internet with AI. And then also encourage the use of other appropriate resources like tutoring if they're just really struggling with understanding the overall content of a class, going to professor office hours, getting the professor's feedback on how they could better study or what the professor is looking for in an assignment, and any other kind of resources that your university may provide, like a writing center or things of that nature. And just showing them that there are other areas that can help you other than just relying on artificial intelligence. And also to continue that conversation, speak to the benefits and the risks of using AI. Inform them about the various ways the professors and the university monitor AI. Each university may be different. Each professor is different as well in their policies. So just speak to the various ways that AI could be appropriate or inappropriate, depending on the class and on the assignment that they're working on. And then speak on some examples that have already occurred in the university. We spoke on a few that have happened here, but maybe you have some own experiences from your university that you could use as in a teachable moment for student athletes, because sometimes they just don't know what they don't know. They may not be aware that the inappropriate use of AI, or that just using AI in general could potentially get them in an eligibility situation or an academic integrity situation. And then show them the ways they can use AI appropriately. Once again, they don't know what they don't know. They may have just learned this trick from a friend and it worked for them. And so they're just trying to make life easier with their busy schedule. So try to show them the appropriate ways to use that. Use AI as a tool, and they might be more apt and more likely to use it as a helpful resource instead of a replacement resource for their learning. And then just overall acknowledging that the struggle is part of the learning process. You don't learn without some failures or without some struggles and some challenges. So just acknowledge that college is hard. You are going to struggle on some things, but that is okay. That is what the people and the academic support system are here for them, is to help them go through that struggle and to show them ways that they can come out on the other end successful, but also that they don't need to rely on those outside sources to try to bail them out, that they are smart, that they are capable, and that they can learn and be successful with their own critical thinking and knowledge.
All right, so how should you report a student if you suspect they are misusing AI? I know many of us may be in different roles and have different reporting systems, but kind of as a general rule, documenting your concerns about a student using AI. They had ChatGPT pulled up while writing their paper. They were copying and pasting contents, whether that's in a report on a session or whether that's in an email to your supervisor, those types of things, just making sure those concerns are documented. Following up with the student support team. So as a learning specialist for me, that would look like following up with their scholastic supervisor, their academic advisor, counselor, probably my supervisor as well, and making sure that everyone's kind of on the same page and knows the situation that might be occurring. And then if you're unsure whether a student is using AI appropriately, it's best to just ask and then still document that even if it's an appropriate usage, we still want to kind of document that they were using this in case any concerns come up later on. Here's an example of a report. We previously used Navigate as our reporting system for student sessions. So this is what a Navigate report would look like if the student was using some sort of AI. And so we had said the student is using ChatGPT for idea generation for his papers. I've been monitoring his use. He's not been flagged for plagiarism, but we just want to kind of keep an eye on this in case this becomes a concern later on. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and do a quick activity. We have a couple of prompts and then a couple of different options for whether the text has been AI generated or whether it was a student that wrote the response. So if you all want to pop in the chat, whether you think the text is AI generated or whether you think it was a student that wrote it, we will go ahead and get started with that. So here's the prompt. It says to describe what authentic leadership means to you. How can you be an authentic leader? Here is the first response. And once you kind of read it, just throw in the chat whether you think this was a student or whether you think this was AI that wrote this. I'm seeing a lot of student, 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 student. Correct. It was a student that wrote this. I'll point out a couple of tells that this was a student. The word cool is not something that AI would normally write. Showing my passion every day. Every day should be 2 words here, so there's a little grammar mistake, and he's talking about teammates. So those are a few key takeaways that this is probably written by a student. Here's the next response. AI across the board. Yep, this is AI generated. So common ways to tell that this is AI generated. Like I said earlier, there's a lot of lists. So honesty, transparency, and integrity. I prioritize understanding my values and strengths, consistently acting in alignment. So something that's like a big statement, but it's pretty vague. Open communication, listening actively and empathetically. Lots of lists, lots of kind of long sentences, big words, but a lot of vagueness in the actual response. Okay, here is the next prompt. This was from a history class here at A&M. So it says, how was the slave auction conducted? How does reading this passage make you feel? And how does it help you better understand the history of slavery? Here is the first response. Seeing a lot of AI on this one as well. Yep, it is AI generated. So some tells here, the word dehumanizing, not something that we kind of use in our normal vocabulary, institutionalized exploitation, another kind of big phrase, and then they're not referring to a specific reading here. So the prompt asks them to refer to the reading and how it made them feel, and then this just says kind of reading about slave auctions invokes feelings of anger, sorrow, and disgust. So more of those lists and those types of things. All right, and here's another response. Seeing lots of student. Yep. So some tells here that this came from a student. The word "it is crazy to think about" is definitely a key tell that this is from a student. And just kind of shorter sentences, no lists, those types of things. Okay, so that kind of concludes our presentation portion today. I know Isabella was going to kind of help monitor any questions, but y'all can feel free to raise hands or throw those in the chat.
I also just wanted to say, while we were doing that exercise, there was a couple comments in the chat about how the students' writing was more enjoyable to read, that the AI's writing was more boring and just really too formal. And that's definitely a big tell. And when you can see that it's missing that human touch in the writing and that human critical thinking and learning. And so I really liked that being thrown in there, because it's very true and a very good tell as well with supporting students and helping them go through their work and reading through that.
Sure. Any questions?
We will go Castrossi. We'll go with you first.
Sorry, yeah, this is Cynthia Castro from Oregon State University. It's my username for the university. I don't know why my Facebook account won't let me change it. So thank you so much. This is super helpful. As we're all trying to like manage this in our day-to-day work, and it seems like it changes so fluently, and one instructor could allow it and another doesn't. And so this is kind of maybe not, yes, it's impacting our students, but it's more related, my question's more related to equipping our peer educators to support student athletes when it comes to utilizing AI in their maybe preparation for their sessions with the student athletes, or maybe like during their actual sessions. So we're working on guidelines to support student athletes in general from that perspective, to help our peer educators, our tutors, our facilitators, all of those folks. And so wondering if you all have like a written policy that you have for your peer educators at Texas A&M, and maybe just some like general thoughts around maybe what you think best practices are, which probably very similar to what we've already covered. So
yeah. Definitely. So that's a great question. I don't know if we talked about it from the perspective of session preparation, but this presentation originally was a workshop for our part-time staff that we kind of tweaked for a different audience. But this is definitely something that we have educated our part-time staff on, our tutors, our mentors, the people that are working with students day to day. We have a very wide range of people that help support our students, from retired teachers to other current students. And so we feel it's really important that they're all kind of educated on what those new technologies are. and what are the different functions of them, and what are ways that they can use them and help support students versus what are ways that students may use them without integrity. And so that was kind of the purpose and the groundwork for this presentation, but I do think it's really important to get in front of that with your part-time staff and really kind of educate on what kind of options are out there. We also have a lot of documentation in forms of like a handbook for our academic tutors or academic mentors. And that's something that could definitely be included in those types of documents of what does a best practice look like for AI and what should you do in those situations. Alyssa, I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that.
I was just going to say, we also communicated in a way that the same standards that we have for the full-time staff is also what we have for the part-time staff as well, that just because they support students at a different level, that we all uphold the same standards and follow the same policy as well. And so that's really the only thing that I would kind of add, is that we didn't change it to make it different just for that population, but that we all have that kind of same standard and same processes in place for sessions and reporting and things like that.
We'll go to Stephen next, and then
Real quick, Isabella, just a quick follow-up question. Did you all work like with your like student conduct office at all when you were kind of trying to put together these guidelines?
We did not communicate with them directly, but we do have the student conduct office kind of come and give presentations to our part-time staff as well, and to students. So that's something that we've kind of been educated on and wanted to expand on and make its own kind of presentation and topic.
Okay, thank you.
And then we'll go with Stephen, and then we'll have a question in the chat after that.
Okay, thank you for taking my question. So I might be a little off because I joined a little late. So the question is, I'm not very familiar with it. Would a student be permitted to, in some way, be permitted to submit, let's say, a first draft of a writing assignment they were to produce to AI in some fashion, and then gather some feedback from AI and go forward and then eventually submit that work? Is that possible, and would that be a permissible practice is basically my question. So thank you.
Yes, so I've recently spoken with Sam, our reading specialist here, and she had mentioned that a professor actually encouraged students to submit a draft of an essay into, I believe it was ChatGPT or another AI website to get some feedback on, and then they go and make those edits themselves. So in that case, because it was recommended by the professor, it would be an appropriate use. I believe as long as the actual written portion is in the student's words, then that would be appropriate, and they're really just getting some feedback on how to make it better, similarly to how they would use Grammarly or like spell check or things of that nature. So I believe that's what's tricky too about AI, is there is some gray areas of what some people may consider to be appropriate and other people's philosophies. But from that standpoint, and if the professor has explicitly stated it, like the professor here, then I would argue that that could be appropriate use. Jessica, if you had any other thoughts.
Yeah, it's pretty much what I was going to say. I just think having the professor's consent. So if it's something that, you know, the professor hasn't directly said one way or another, whether AI usage is acceptable, kind of presenting that situation to them and letting them make the decision, because ultimately they're the ones that would be grading the work, and then kind of taking that forward if they were concerned about conduct and academic integrity.
All right, thank you.
And then from Michelle, do you ever have concerns about tutors showing student athletes the incorrect ways to use AI? Do you have anything in place to combat that from a policy perspective?
I think this is something that we were kind of aware of giving this workshop, that tutors were maybe a little more well-versed on what these technologies can do. and a little more aware on kind of how they work. I don't know that we've directly had those types of concerns, but I would say that we have a really robust kind of policies and procedures and reporting procedures to where if that was ever a concern, that would definitely be something that would kind of be brought up to their supervisor or tutor coordinator and addressed with them. I think some of the point of giving this education to mentors and tutors on the front end is so those types of things don't happen. But obviously, you know, unfortunately that can happen. And so trying to combat that with the education and then the follow-up. Alyssa, do you have anything to add?
Not too much, but yeah, this is something I haven't personally seen ourselves, and that, like Jessica said, was kind of the point of our this workshop with the part-time staff in the beginning, was just to inform them of the risks and the benefits, but they also are students too. So I would just probably recommend if you could implement that into some kind of training, whether it's the onboarding training, making it a written policy somewhere in a handbook, that would probably be the best proactive approach rather than a reactive approach.
All right, if there are no further questions, I'm going to share our QR code for, I did not click the right thing, for the evaluation for these sessions. Make sure everyone fills these out at the end of each session you attend so we can get some good feedback. But again, if you have no further questions, we will go ahead. I'll probably close the room in about 2 minutes just so people can kind of scan this. And then these sessions, again, are recorded. So at the end of the summit, everyone will receive an email with all of the session recordings. All right, and I'll close it just to make sure everyone has a break before the next 2 o'clock session start. But thank you all so much again, and have a great day.